Everybody, and welcome to WTF Hammer Underworlds. So, upon completing and consolidating all the Season 1 and 2 reviews and the balancing suggestions, I decided to move on to the Season 3 stuff, starting with the sort of Season 2.5 Dreadfane that came out just before the official Beastgrave release. So, I'll be doing a review of these two warbands, starting with the Ironsoul's Condemnors, who are basically just a band of Stormcast Eternals who are specialized in taking out demons and ethereal creatures, who found themselves in Dreadfane and then eventually in Beastgrave. So in this review, I'm going to be looking at this warband's fighter cards, their faction-specific cards, and then I'm going to be rating this warband to put them in comparison with all the other warbands that I've rated thus far. So let's just start by taking a look at the fighter cards. There are 3 units in this warband, all pretty durable as you can see with 4 wounds, so pretty standard for Stormcast Eternals. All starting off with 1 shield, all starting off with 3 movement, which is pretty low, and all having the same inspiring mechanic, which is to roll a crit on either an attack roll or a defense roll, which is pretty tricky. But aside from that, there are some differences between these units, so let's just take a closer look. Starting with the leader, Gwyn Ironsoul, who has a very accurate melee attack. 3 hammers for 2 damage, going to 3 damage when inspired, and then getting knockback, becoming knockback 2 if a crit is rolled, and also going to 2 shield upon being inspired. Next is Brodus Blightbane, who hits really hard, but with medium sort of accuracy, 2 hammers, 3 damage, and with knockback. And basically maintaining that attack, but getting knockback 2 and cleave on it when inspired, and also getting a scything attack that also cleaves, but for less damage. And not only getting that shield, that defense increase, but also getting an increase in movement going up to 4. And finally, there's Tavian of Sarnassus, who is also very accurate. 3 hammers, 2 damage, remaining as 3 hammers, 2 damage, but also having a shield slam kind of reaction ability if an attack action against her misses. Specifically when she's inspired though, doing 2 damage, knockback 2. And then also getting the 2 shields when inspired. So pretty straightforward. So overall pros being that this warband actually has a lot of special combat abilities. They have knockback, in some cases knockback 2. They have scything when inspired, cleave when inspired, and that shield rush ability when inspired. They also have good defense, 2 shields, very solid, but once again only when inspired. They have high wounds across the board, decent to high accuracy, mostly high accuracy. They do pretty high damage, 2 to 3, and they have a small model number, which can make it difficult for aggressive warbands to take your units out of action because there's not a ton of targets for them to go after. However, they do have a number of cons. First being their lowish movement, which always has a big impact in the game. When you can't cover the ground you need to cover, it makes it hard to attack, it makes it hard to cover objectives. They have no range capabilities, so combined with the lowish movement, it can make it pretty difficult to actually reach enemies and attack them. Their inspire mechanic is very unreliable, requiring you to roll a crit, and I mean, of course you're going to be making many rolls, whether they're attack or defense rolls, so a crit is always possible, but definitely not a guarantee. I've gone entire games rolling dice countless times and haven't rolled a crit. It does happen. There's a random component to the game. So having their inspire mechanic depending completely on this random component can be a bit frustrating. They have no special abilities, and by that I mean like nothing specifically unique to their warband. I mean, they have shield rush, which is kind of a special ability, but that's pretty much it. And they do have a small model number, which, as I mentioned, has its pros, but also has its cons because there are fewer actions each round, especially if some units get taken out of action, and they do struggle to hold objective tokens because there's not a lot of units to do it. So that's basically my synopsis of the fighter cards. We're going to take a look now at the objective cards. Starting with the score immediately cards, there are 4 of them. First one is Forceful Banishment. Score this immediately when an enemy fighter is driven back by a friendly fighter's attack action that has the knockback ability, worth 1 glory point. So a faction-specific Get Thee Hence, which is really nice. I mean, I'm giving it an A, could be worth an S, since 2 of these guys have knockback. Only real issue with knockback is if you happen to kill them with the swing, then they don't get knocked back, so you can't score this card. So not really worth an S in my opinion. Next is Martial Prowess. Score this immediately after your warband makes a 3rd or subsequent successful attack action in the same phase, worth 2 glory points. So obviously difficult to pull off, but the fact that it's 2 glory for a score immediate made it worth an A in my book, but it could be worth a B. Wrathful Blow. Surge Duel. Score this immediately if a friendly fighter's attack action takes an enemy fighter out of action, and that friendly fighter has 1 or more wound tokens, so basically taking someone out of action that's already injured, worth 1 glory point. I'm giving that a B, because it's useful for taking out more durable enemies, but against Horde warbands, this card might be pretty difficult to score. And finally, your turn. Score this immediately when an enemy fighter is driven back into a hex adjacent to a friendly fighter, worth 1 glory. I'm giving this a B as well because it does require some tactical positioning, which can be a bit difficult to pull off. But it is still pretty cool and can work out if you do cater your power card deck towards control. All right, so that's it for the Surge. Now the score in the end phase cards. We have Aetheric Mastery. Score this in an end phase if there are 2 or more surviving friendly fighters, and all friendly fighters are inspired, worth 2 glory. So a bit of glory for getting your guys inspired, which is very difficult to do, very unreliable, so I'm giving this a B. There's Sacrosanct Purge. Score this in an end phase if 2 or more enemy fighters were taken out of action in this round, worth 1 glory. I'm giving that a D because it's hard. I mean, committing an objective card that's only worth 1 glory in an end phase, that can only be scored if you absolutely kill 2 units, is definitely not a guarantee. Sally Forth. Score this in an end phase if there are 2 or more friendly fighters adjacent to each other in enemy territory, worth 1 glory. So I'm giving it a B because it's not so difficult to pull off, but it's not worth a ton. And enemies can definitely thwart this by just knocking your guys around last minute or using push cards. There's Strength and Unity. Score this in an end phase if there are 2 or more surviving friendly fighters, and each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more move tokens, and or each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more charge tokens, and or each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more guard tokens, worth 1 glory. So basically glory for sort of using all of your units, at least 2 of them, worth a B, only because it's worth 1 in an end phase, but it is pretty easy to pull off. Stormforged Heroes. Score this in an end phase if there are 2 or more surviving friendly fighters, and each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more upgrades. So also a B, not so hard to pull off, but not worth a ton. Uncontested Might. Score this in an end phase if your warband holds 1 or more objectives in enemy territory, worth 1 glory. Also a B, for the same reasons I've been mentioning for the other cards. Vengeance Satisfied. Score this in an end phase if more than half of the fighters in 1 or more enemy warbands are out of action, worth 2 glory points. So I'm giving this a B as well because it's pretty good, but if you draw this in the first round, it's pretty hard to pull off. Some warbands like Zarbags, you have to have 5 units get taken out of action, which is very difficult. Other warbands that only have 3 units, you still have to take 2 of them out, which is definitely not easy. It can be hard to pull off. And finally, there's Vindicated Arrogance. Score this in an end phase if your leader was the target of 1 or more attack actions in this round and is on the battlefield, worth 1 glory. So I'm giving this a C, could be worth a B. It's only worth 1 glory. Kind of encourages you to put your leader in danger, which, I mean, I guess there's not really much reason not to do that, so maybe it's worth a B. And that does it. So if we take a general overview of this objective card deck, we can see that they promote attacking and taking enemy fighters out of action, strategic driving back of enemies, inspiring enemy fighters, clustering in enemy territory, activating all fighters, upgrading fighters, holding objectives in enemy territory, and surviving attacks. So next we're going to take a look at the power cards, starting with the ploys, no spells. First ploy being Adaptive Tactics. Draw up to 1 objective card and up to 1 power card, then discard 1 objective card. So I'm giving this a B because it is actually very nice, but the fact that you have to discard an objective card, even if you decide not to draw a new objective card, is really a bummer because typically, obviously, you don't want to discard objective cards, you want to score them. Champions of Sigmar. The first range 1 or range 2 attack action made by a friendly fighter in the next activation has innate support. So I'm giving this a B as well because it can be very nice, but it does require that you do have units supporting each other, which is not always easy in a 3-unit warband. Fulminating Blast. Push an enemy fighter up to 1 hex. Faction-specific distraction. That's worth an A. Improvised Blow. Choose a friendly fighter adjacent to an enemy fighter. The chosen fighter makes the following attack action, which is fairly accurate with 3 swords, but only doing 1 damage. But it's a nice out-of-turn attack, so I'm giving it an A. Inevitable Blow. Pick, Cleave, or Ensnare. The first range 1 or range 2 attack action made by a friendly fighter in the next activation has that ability. So I'm giving it an A because it's a nice accuracy boost. Outflank. Choose a friendly fighter adjacent to another fighter and push them up to 2 hexes. Now I'm giving this a B because it's a very nice push card, but it does require that. But it is only playable under the condition that you have units adjacent to each other. Steadfast. Choose a friendly fighter and give them a guard token. So I'm going to give this a B as well. It's just nice, but not so great until your unit is inspired. Thunderous Might. As a reaction, play this during a friendly fighter's range 1 attack action that will succeed before the deal damage step. If that step instead of dealing damage equal to the damage characteristic of the attack action, the target is dealt 1 damage, and each enemy fighter adjacent to the target is dealt 1 damage. So it allows you to sort of spread out the damage from an attack. I'm giving this a B because it requires that your enemies be clustered together, which is no guarantee. Unyielding Resolve. Choose a friendly fighter and roll a defense dice. On a roll of shield or crit, heal 2 to that fighter, otherwise heal 1 to that fighter. So basically a healing potion, faction specific. It's pretty nice. I'm giving it an A. Especially nice considering that there's only 3 units in this warband. Vengeful Strike. As a reaction, play this during an enemy fighter's attack action that deals damage to an adjacent friendly fighter. Before the drive back step, roll an attack dice. On a roll of shield or crit, the friendly fighter is not driven back and makes an attack action that targets the attacker. So basically an out of turn attack action that depends on a 50% die roll. I'm giving it a B, because 50% is definitely not a guarantee. And that does it. So just to quickly summarize here, these Gambit cards promote drawing cards, improving the support mechanic, increasing the accuracy of attacks, providing out-of-turn attacks, altering friendly and enemy positions, healing, improving defense, and preventing drive back. So next we're going to be taking a look at the upgrades, starting with Aetherically Charged Shield, restricted to Ironsoul or Tavian, because they have shields. You can reroll 1 dice in each defense roll made for this fighter. So pretty nice, I'm giving it a B. Aetherically Charged Weapon. You can reroll 1 dice in the attack roll of the first attack action made this fighter makes in each round. So also nice, I'm giving it an A because it has no restrictions. And these guys roll more dice on their attacks than on their defense generally. Consecrated Pendant, +1 wound, very nice, I'm giving it an A. Enchanted Robes, +1 move, and this fighter treats lethal hexes as normal hexes. Also very nice, I'm giving this an S because lethal hexes are a massive pain. And getting any kind of immunity to it is a big strength. Hollowed Aura. Reaction. After an attack action that deals damage to this fighter, roll an attack dice. On a roll of hammer or crit, heal this fighter 1. So 50% chance of healing this fighter every time they are damaged. So I'm giving it an A because it is kind of like a damage reduction. Not super dissimilar to the Wormspat. Punishing Blow. Unique to Blightbane. 3 hammers cleave 4 damage, but only usable once. I'm giving it an A because it can be very significant if timed right. Sanctified Armor. When this fighter is dealt damage, reduce that damage by 1 to a minimum of 1, so some legitimate damage reduction. I'm giving this an S as well. Can really help these guys become more durable, especially when combined with Consecrated Pendant and the Hollowed Aura, as well as the Aetherically Charged Shield. Soul Hardened Shield. When this fighter is activated before making an action with them, give them a guard token. So also very nice. I'm giving this an A. Spirit Flask. As an action, choose 1. Either deal 1 damage to an adjacent enemy fighter or heal 2 to this fighter and then discard the card. So pretty nice, pretty versatile. I'm giving this an A. And finally, Stoic Stance. This fighter cannot be driven back. Pretty reliable also. I'm giving it a B. Not so exceptional, but it's okay. And that does it for all this warband's cards. So the upgrade cards typically promote getting rerolls, increasing wounds, increasing movement, healing, reducing damage received, improving defense, preventing drive back, and providing some exceptional, at least in one case, weapon upgrades. So if we look at the totality of all of the ranks that I gave to all of their cards, you can see this warband actually has some pretty nice cards. I mean, objectives are pretty mediocre, I guess, most of them being B, but they do have a couple really good ones. They definitely are lacking a little bit in that department though. Gambits are generally pretty good. None that are amazing, but 4 that are still solid. And upgrades, I mean, they have 2 that are pretty amazing, 6 that are pretty solid. I mean, upgrades is really where these guys are at. They have very strong upgrades that make them a lot tougher, more accurate, better at killing. So upgrades are definitely not lacking here. And cards in general are pretty good, especially when compared to Season 1 and 2. So that does it for my ranking of all the cards. Now let's just rate this warband as a whole. This warband has a decent array of objective cards that promote advancing and attacking. They have a strong array of power cards which complement their durability and generally align with the goals of their objective cards, generally. However, they do have a very unreliable Inspire mechanic, needing to roll a crit on either an attack or a defense roll. And unfortunately, their defense is low and therefore has no guarantee of improving since they get that extra defense boost when inspired. But I would say though that they do have the best array of faction-specific healing cards in the game. So that does balance it out a little bit, at least the durability of them. And finally, they have low movement, which is a big complication for these guys. And they do have some power cards to counterbalance it, but not a lot, because they basically just typically struggle covering ground, which is challenging considering their objective cards that they're supposed to be advancing and taking units out of action. So bit of a struggle there. in terms of their fighter cards and what their objective expectations are. So because of this, I'm giving this warband a ranking of a B, and here's how they fit in the overall scheme of things. I'm actually putting them as the lowest tier B. I'm putting them lower than Magor's because Magor's does have pretty good aggressive potential with their 4 units that are all pretty tough, that can all cover ground decently, and they have objective cards that align more accurately with what their fighter cards and power cards allow them to actually do. Whereas Ironsoul, Condemnors, I mean, they just struggle. They could be a C, but I do feel they are a step above Far Strider, so I'm putting them as the last of the B tier. That's my opinion, though. And of course, if you guys have different opinions, feel free to share them in the comments below. If you guys like this video, please like and subscribe, because I do like producing this content and I plan to continue doing it. And in the description, I'm actually going to be posting a link for a balancing video that I'm making for Ironsoul Condemnors, which basically just gives my suggestions as to how I recommend Games Workshop tweak this warband to put them into a more competitive range, similar to the level that I had been modifying all the previous warbands that I reviewed and balanced in my other videos. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll keep rolling forward week to week with new reviews for Season 3, and hopefully you'll enjoy those too. So have a nice day.